Okay, so this Independence Day, we got a huge announcement, a massive new jobs plan. We're talking ambitious, we're talking expensive, and it's all aimed right at India's youth. So the big question on everyone's mind is this the plan that's finally going to crack the employment code? Or, is it just another headline that sounds good for a week? Let's dive in and really unpack this.
All right, first things first. Let's just talk about the sheer scale of this thing. The number is, well, it's 1 lakh crore rupees. That's right, 1 lakh crore. That is the budget for this brand new PM-Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana. I mean, that's a number designed to make you sit up and pay attention, right? It's basically the government signaling, hey, we're stepping into the job market in a huge way.
And that really brings us to the core of this whole explainer, doesn't it? On one side, you have this massive potential. I mean, could this be the game changer that millions of young Indians have been desperately waiting for? But then, on the other side, there's this, this healthy dose of skepticism. People are asking, is this a real solution, or is it just another big promise that's going to fade away by next year?
All right, so let's get into it. Section 1, the promise. Let's break down exactly what was announced from the Red Fort. What is this 1 lakh rupee promise really all about?
Okay, so the core of the scheme, the PM-VBRY, has two main parts. First, if you're a young person landing your very first formal job, you get 15,000 rupees, straight up, a direct payment. And second, the companies that are actually doing the hiring, they get cash incentives. So, you see what they're doing? It's a direct push on both sides, helping the job seekers and encouraging the job creators.
But that begs the question, right? Why launch such a massive, expensive scheme right now? Well, to get that, we need to look at the very real pressure that's been building up in India's job market.
If you just look at the headline number, the overall unemployment rate is 5.6%. And you might think, okay, that doesn't sound too bad. But that's not the real story. The real story is in the details. Because when you zoom in on young people in our cities, that number just skyrockets to almost 19%. And that massive gap, well, that points to a very, very specific crisis.
And look, it's not just one data point. The warning signs are pretty much everywhere you look. We saw that unemployment spike to over 9% just back in mid-2024. The ILO, the International Labor Organization, has been sounding the alarm, saying joblessness among educated youth is a growing, serious problem. And then you've got this really concerning group of young people. They're called NEET. It stands for not in education, employment, or training. They're just disconnected. So all of this together, this is the pressure cooker that's led to this big government push.
Okay, so we've covered the what, the big promise, and the why, the jobs problem. Now let's get into the mechanics. How is this scheme actually supposed to work? How do these incentives turn into real jobs? So let's break this table down. It's pretty straightforward. On one side, you've got the support for young people. You land your first formal job, you get a one-time payment of 15,000 rupees. Simple. On the other side, you've got the incentive for employers. Companies that are creating these new jobs get cash incentives for every person they hire and keep on. Now, the key detail here is eligibility. This whole thing is tied to companies registered with the EPFO. That's the Social Security Organization, right? And the goal there is to pull more and more people into the formal economy, jobs with actual benefits and protections. So what's the logic behind this? You can think of it as a double push. For the young person just starting out, that 15 grand is a huge deal. It can cover the cost of moving to a new city or maybe paying the deposit on a flat. It just lowers that first barrier to entry. And for the companies, especially small and medium ones, this incentive basically reduces the financial risk of hiring fresh talent, someone with no track record. So the goal at the end of the day is pretty simple. Get more people onto official, formal payrolls.
Now, with a plan this massive, there are obviously some really strong arguments for why this could be a huge success. So let's look at the best-case scenario. Why might this thing be a total game changer?
Well, supporters are pointing to a few key strengths. First off, it targets that really crucial and often really difficult first step onto the career ladder. That's a big one. Second, that 15,000 rupee payment isn't just some abstract number, it's practical. It's real money that can cover real-world costs like moving or taking a short skilling course. Third, for all the small and medium businesses out there, this could be just the nudge they need to finally say, you know what, let's hire that new person. And finally, by tying it all to Social Security, it's constantly pushing for formalization, which means more workers get access to long-term benefits.
But of course, with any policy this big, the devil is always in the details. So now we have to flip the coin and look at the critical perspective. What are the potential risks here? What could go wrong?
So, the critics are raising 3 major red flags. First, and this is a big one, subsidies don't create jobs if there's no demand in the market. I mean, if no one is buying your product, you're not going to hire someone new, no matter what incentive you're offered. Second, there's a huge risk of fraud. People are talking about payroll jugglery, basically companies creating fake new hires on paper just to claim the cash. And third, this plan doesn't really solve the core problem of the skills mismatch. Where graduates have a degree, but not the specific skills the companies are desperate for.
And for a lot of people who follow policy closely, this all brings on a powerful sense of déjà vu. This quote really captures that feeling perfectly. India has seen this movie before. Lofty targets, grand launches, and later, data that tells a very different story.
And if you look back, you can really see that pattern. Back in 2014, the promise was 2 crore jobs a year. Then in 2019, there were claims of adding 2.5 crore jobs. But those numbers faced a lot of criticism about how they were calculated. And now, here we are in 2025 with this 1 lakh crore PM-VBRY. It's this history, this track record, that really frames the whole debate we're having today.
So, what's it going to take for this time to be different? Well, the final verdict, whether this succeeds or fails, really seems to hinge on a few key questions that, frankly, we need clear answers to, and fast.
Okay, urgent question number 1. What exactly is a first job? Think about it. If you've done a paid internship, does that count? Are you disqualified? The fine print here could make or break this for millions of people.
And question number 2 is all about the employers. How are we defining a net new job? Is it based on your total employees this quarter compared to last quarter, or is it a yearly thing? Because for a company trying to decide whether to hire, that single detail changes everything.
All right, question 3 is about strategy. Is every new job treated the same, or will the government offer bigger incentives for jobs in priority sectors, like, say, manufacturing, to line up with other big national goals? Is it just about quantity, or is there a plan for quality too?
And this one is absolutely crucial, accountability. How are we going to stop the fraud? What specific systems are going to be in place to prevent that payroll jugglery we mentioned? How do you stop this from becoming a leaky bucket?
And finally, question number 5. Transparency. Are we, the public, going to get a real-time dashboard to track how many jobs are actually being created? Can we see the numbers for ourselves? Because at the end of the day, public scrutiny is probably the best accountability tool we have.
So here's the final word on this. This whole thing is a bold, incredibly expensive bet. If all those questions we just asked get answered with clear rules and total transparency, this thing could genuinely change lives. But if they don't, well, it risks becoming exactly what the critics fear, another headline promise that just fades from memory before the next Independence Day. The real question isn't whether the government can spend 1 lakh crore rupees. The real question is whether it can earn the trust of a generation that's just waiting for a real chance.